Hello, this is chapter 7 of the book Listen. 1 week. It has been a week. Charlie, at the dining room window, chews her lip and scratches on poison ivy rash on the inside of her elbow as she watches Coyote sneak up to the bowl of food at the end of the driveway. He still refuses to eat unless she is all the way inside the house with the doors closed. A whole week she's been feeding him and there's been no change at all. No, she thinks, there's been a change all right, in the wrong dog. Sadie doesn't go home anymore as soon as they get out to Charlie's house. Charlie can't put Coyote's food out while Sadie's there, or Sadie will eat it, so she has to tie her to the railing by the side door till Coyote is finished. The first time she tied her, Charlie took Sadie a couple of biscuits after she put Coyote's food out for him so Sadie wouldn't feel left out. The dog books are right about patterns and routine. Sadie expects the tying now and the biscuits. Every day when Coyote has eaten, Charlie unties Sadie and Sadie hangs around for a while before she goes home, hoping, Charlie thinks, for more biscuits. Coyote, still standing as far from the food bowl as he can, stretches his head down and snatches a few mouthfuls before backing away and checking for danger. It's almost as if he's two different creatures, the regular dog that trots along the trail or frolics with Sadie, and the wild one, the wary and terrified one Charlie is watching now. He looks exactly the way he did the very first day. His tail down, his ears back, every muscle on his body tense and ready to run. She doesn't understand why he's so frightened. It can't be just that he's wild. Wild animals come to food. When they used to have bird feeders, the birds came right away to get the seed. And squirrels, they used to raid the feeders and wouldn't back off even if you pounded on the windows. Her mother would... Charlie stops the thought, pushes the memory away. The point is that even with a person a few feet away stomping and yelling at them, squirrels, fully wild creatures, are more interested in food than afraid of people. For Coyote, it's different. Why? What could his life have been like before he came to Eagle Lake? Without Charlie's intending it, an image forms in her mind. A man is putting food at the edge of a mowed yard where the wood begins. She closes her eyes and gives herself over to the images, like watching a movie in her mind. Setting the bowl down, the man slips behind a bush a few feet away. There's a car parked on the gravel drive nearby. Oh, there's a little flicker, making a little hole in the tree. He's a tiny one too. There's a car parked on a gravel drive nearby. Another man is crouched behind the car, waiting. Coyote, nose up, materializes out of the woods. As he approaches the food, the men pounce. He is picked up and carried, struggling, to a small shed and locked inside. Charlie shivers and opens her eyes. This really happened, she thinks. She feels it the way she felt the dog's terror as he struggled to get free of the men holding him. No wonder Coyote's so wary about being fed. Seems like they're connected. All this time, she's been counting on food to win him over. The books say that dogs bond readily to the person who feeds them. Feeding Coyote is supposed to show him that she's a friend, someone he can trust, but it's doing the opposite. Putting that bowl out every day only proves to him that she's dangerous, a threat. Like the animal control people Mrs. Davis called. No wonder the can of tuna they said would lure any dog into a trap didn't work. Coyote understands about food and humans, food and traps. Charlie pulls a chair away from the dining room table and sits down by the window. There's nothing in the dog training books that will help her solve this problem. Nothing about working with a wild and terrified dog you can't touch or even get close to, a dog you can't collar or cage or corral. She feels like crying. She'll have to rethink her whole plan. Plan, as if she's really got one. All there was to it was the idea that walking him around the lake and feeding him every day would get him to trust her. The taming was supposed to happen all by itself. Food, good. Charlie gives food. Charlie, good. Like that. Everyone at Eagle Lake knows now what Charlie is trying to do. Mrs. Jensen, the retired librarian who used to babysit her when she was little, is the editor of Tail Feathers, the newsletter that went into everybody's boxes over the weekend. She wrote a story about Charlie and Coyote and asked anyone who might have been feeding him to stop so that Charlie would be the only one he could go to for food. Yesterday, when Charlie got around to the Davises' house, Mrs. Davis and Sadie were out on the road with Mr. and Mrs. Sutcliffe and their Labrador retriever, Boone, and Mrs. Hobbs with her little white dog, Pandy. They'd all told her what a good thing she was doing. All I have in my head right now is these people should not be gathering together. All the time that they were standing in the road talking, the dogs, including Coyote, had played in the Davises' yard. But when the Sutcliffes and Mrs. Hobbs went on their walk and Mrs. Davis went inside, Coyote disappeared into the woods. What, besides food, does she have to offer this dog? A place to live? But he has that. He isn't very comfortable. It's just a bare spot under a tree. If he were really wild, a fox or a coyote, he wouldn't have any more than that. A den, maybe. Coyote could probably dig himself a den if he wanted one, if he needed one. Okay, so she can offer him companionship, but he has Sadie and the other dogs. Why would he want companionship with a human? Mrs. Hobbs told her yesterday that Coyote used to follow anyone who walked a dog around the lake, staying mostly out of sight in the woods, but still following. It wasn't just the other dogs he was following. He wants a family. You can see it in his eyes. Charlie wonders if that could be true. She thinks of the connection she felt with him the first time she saw him. It wasn't just from her to him, it was from him to her too. He does want a family. He's just too afraid to know how to make it happen. She looks out at him now, finishing the last of the food, backing away towards the woods. He needs me, she thinks. Coyotes and foxes and wolves know how to live in the wild. Dogs don't. What about winter? Every year, on really cold nights, they tell people on the evening news to bring their dogs inside or make sure that they have a warm, insulated shelter to go to. Coyote won't have that. He needs me. He does. She has to come up with a way to make herself more to him than the person who puts the food out for him. Stop that scratching! Sarita had left her jigsaw puzzle and come into the dining room. Don't you know the hot water trick? Charlie hasn't realized she's scratching on her arm again. What trick? Run water as hot as you can stand it, on that rash until it doesn't itch anymore. That'll stop the itching all day, 8 hours anyway. Do it again before you go to bed and it won't itch in the night either. Stupid old wives' tale, Charlie thinks. If that worked, why wouldn't everybody know how to do it? How do you know? Sarita's eyes flash. Because I know everything. Yeah, right. You can do it, or you can go on itching. It's up to you. Charlie decides to try. Sarita follows her into the kitchen. So, she says, not much change in that wild dog. Charlie tests the water to see how hot it is, then puts her arm under the faucet. How long do I have to do this? Like I said, till it stops itching. People caught him with food before, Charlie says. She doesn't mention how she knows this. Feeding scares him. I need to do something that'll give him a reason to like me. If you know everything, tell me what to do. What do other dogs like people for? Charlie realizes the poison ivy really has stopped itching. She turns off the water. Playing, I guess? Fetch? Catch? But he isn't a regular dog. Hi, Julie. He's my other kitty. He doesn't do that kind of stuff. Sadie does, Sarita says. When Charlie goes out to untie Sadie, Sadie frisks around her, front paws splayed, head down, her back end in the air, tail wagging. She's begging Charlie to play. Sarita's certainly right about Sadie. Charlie leans down to get a dead branch that's fallen off of one of the trees by the carport. Hi, Gilly. I have a lot of cats. Come here. Come say hi. Doo-doo. Oh, okay. As soon as she picks it up, Sadie leaps for it, trying to snatch it away. Down, Charlie says. No, Gilbert. Don't do it. Don't do it. You are such a pest. I'm sorry, he's like completely tangled and he's gonna he's gonna pull the whole camera down with him. Could you hurry up? Come on. Get out of here. Thank you. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so as soon as she picks it up, Sadie leaps for it, trying to snatch it away. Down, Charlie says, holding it as high in the air as she can. She throws the stick up the slope of the driveway toward where Coyote's watching from the safety of the trees. Go get it, Sadie. The dog doesn't need the words. Of course not, Charlie thinks, watching her tear off after the stick. Golden retriever. Charlie calls to Sadie to bring back the stick. She isn't as good at letting go as she is at retrieving, but Charlie managed to get it away from her and throw it again. Ears flying, Sadie runs after the stick and Charlie moves up the drive, keeping an eye on Coyote, who is sitting in a tangle of honeysuckle on the other side of the road. This is what dogs and people do together, she thinks at him. Sadie drops the stick and backs away from it, wagging. Charlie picks it up and Sadie begins to bark, urging her to throw it. Coyote is standing now, ears and tail up, following every movement. His tail has begun to wag. When Charlie throws the stick, Sadie gets it and Coyote comes out of the woods to join the game, chasing Sadie. After a few minutes, Sadie drops the stick and the game becomes their usual chase and grab. So focused is Coyote that he doesn't notice when Charlie moves into the middle of the yard so that the dogs have to swerve around her as they run, the way they swerve around the azaleas. An azalea is a flower. A big bush. At last, Sadie, tongue hanging out, flopping onto the grass a few feet from where Charlie is standing. Coyote circles, barking a high-pitched bark, snapping at Sadie's ears, her feet up, urging her up again. When she doesn't respond, he gives up and sinks into the ground next to her. It's the closest Charlie has ever been to him. Over Sadie's shoulder, Coyote looks directly at Charlie, his tongue too hanging out as he pants. There are big splotches of blue on his long pink tongue. Charlie's never seen anything like it. Blue spots on his tongue? Sarita says later. That's Chow. Mama or Daddy or Grandma maybe. That dog's got Chow in him somewhere. That's a type of dog. She is leaning over her jigsaw puzzle, squinting at a piece in her hand. So, Charlie says, what does that mean? It means you don't tell your father yet. Chows have a bad rep in the dog world. Blue tongue's likely to scare Paul Morgan off, end you up with some little beagle pup, some chihuahua. What's the bad rep? Sarita makes a little satisfied huh as she puts the puzzle piece into place. Aggressive, protective, one-man dogs, they say. Well, one family anyway. Coyote's not aggressive, not even with dogs, and he doesn't have a family. Sarita shrugs and takes another piece from the cookie sheet full of bits in the sky. Not now, anyway. You itching, by the way? Charlie looks at the rash on her arm, surprised. No! Don't mess with me, girl. Charlie sees a cloud piece and the place in the puzzle where it will fit and puts it in. You go rest that leg, Sarita says, slapping Charlie's hand. You've been outside too long today. Sarita's right. Charlie realizes when she settles into the recliner. Her leg, her whole body has been getting stronger this week, the walk leaving her with more energy and less pain. But after nearly 2 hours with the dogs, throwing a stick for Sadie sometimes, or just sitting on the fender of Sarita's car in the shade of the carport watching them, she's worn out. When Sadie finally swam home, her tail wagging as she went, throwing drops of water that glinted in the sun, Coyote followed her to the water line and stood with his front feet in the water, whining. "Come back!" he seemed to be calling her. It was as if a bungee cord stretched between the two dogs, pulling harder and harder as Sadie swam away. When she reached the other side and pulled herself out of the water next to Davis's dock, Coyote gave one last exasperated whine and launched himself into the water, swimming with his ears back, his tail completely underwater. The contrast between the way Sadie swam, splashing and wagging, and Coyote's grim determination made Charlie laugh. This was clearly a dog who hated to swim. When he got to the other side, he dragged himself out of the water exactly where Sadie had, shook himself, and followed her up to the trees. Charlie flips the lever on the recliner and leans back, her legs stretched out in front of her. She needs to break the bungee cord that links the dogs, she thinks as she picks up the remote and turns on the television. Better yet, she needs to find a way to transfer the bungee from Sadie to herself. And that is the end of chapter 7.